And now we come here to Berlin. And why we're in Berlin today, it's because of the presidency of for the EU Council that Germany holds from July on. This is the reason we are here in Berlin studio and hearing now some speakers from Germany as well. But before handing over to the speakers here, I would like to present you the next Mentimeter poll, which is the second question. And I wait for the results. Yes, it's here. I do feel a bit like in the Eurovision Song Contest. So, okay. Which of the following EU policies initiatives should the German presidency focus on? And with the biggest majority, it's 43% for answer number 3. That's the farm to fork strategy. And then we have a second tickled one. It's number A, the common agricultural policy. Then it's the EU budget, which is with 22%. And last one here with 9%, the EU biodiversity strategy. So I think this is really something which comes to you, Ellie. Dr. Hocker, it's your turn now, your stage.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm very grateful to Catherine that she mentioned how important the European trade is and has been for getting over this crisis, and that she mentioned how important it was that the products were able to cross the inner European borders. We saw it in Germany a couple of weeks ago, how important also seasonal workers are for Germany, because otherwise we would not have been able to get all the food into our supermarkets that are produced in Germany. So also the flow of workforce has been very important for Europe and for Germany to get over the crisis. Saying that, I'm very convinced about the fact that for the EU presidency of Germany, for the Council, what we need is really to work on is common EU standards. Because nowadays we see that German farmers, for example, have to fulfill much higher standards than farmers, for example, in the southern countries of the EU. And also in the eastern countries of member states of EU, if it comes to animal welfare, if it comes to fertilization or plant protection or everything, 9 out of 10 people, 9 out of 10 consumers say that they are willing to pay higher prices for agricultural products, for food, but just 1 out of 10 consumers are really paying higher prices in the supermarket. And this is a huge gap between what is asked for and what the reality is. And with this situation, we just have it just happens that German farmers who try to fulfill the highest standards are pushed out of the market, and those who fulfill lower standards and their products are bought in Germany, have a success. And this is a result that we cannot want in Germany. That those with higher standards get pushed out of the market because the consumer is not paying the prices that he had to pay for the food that he's buying. And secondly, I think it was very nice of the German government to call the agricultural sector system relevant. But what we see at the same time in Germany is that we get more and more bureaucracy. We have a new legislation a couple of weeks ago about the fertilization regulation, which is another bureaucratic burden that is put upon the German farmers. And if we really talk about how we could get through the next crisis, we also have to see that the population of the world is increasing, and we need intelligent and efficiency in our farming sector that allows us to feed all the mouths. And so with all the wishes and all the polls that we see, I think it's very important to strengthen our agricultural sector, to work on common EU standards, and also to reduce bureaucracy.
Thank you, Dr. Hocker, for your statement. As I said before, we will discuss in the end. So we will first have all the statements and the polling results, and then we discuss all together in the end. So I would like to present the next result of the question number 3. So, while all below categories are important and related, which area of improving the agricultural environment should be focused on first? And number 1 voted by you with 36% is number C, emissions and climate change. So that's first to be improved. Second, it would be A, soil health. Then third, farmland biodiversity. 6 others, what we don't know what is really exactly meant by this. And D, overall reduction in plant protection product use. When we're talking about issues like that, then organic farming is just right away. And following this, I would like to say, Prince Löwenstein, thank you for your statement now. Stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Katrin has talked about the difference between efficiency of the global food system, where we share the labor, and the vulnerability. And I agree with her that in Europe, our food system is quite resilient, but if you see it at the global scale, things are quite different. Look in the global south, and then we see how very vulnerable the food system is. But the second lesson I would like to stress is that we now see how even minor disturbances are able to create massive problems for almost everybody in the globe and catastrophes for millions. And seeing that, we have to acknowledge that there are much bigger challenges ahead that create crisis and catastrophes for billions of people. I'm talking about climate change, I'm talking about the biodiversity crisis, I'm talking about the pollution of oceans and all that. So, as Katrin said, the farm-to-fork strategy and the biodiversity strategy came in the right moment, even though I guess it had been planned long before, but it fits entirely into what we have to discuss now. And it is discussed now with very much, I would say, vehemence. People are saying that if we do what is suggested there, then we lose our food security, we will destroy the economic existence of our societies, or at least of our farmers, and all that. The funny thing is, I very often hear, we have to do that because the European consumer asks for it. But that's not the entire truth. The entire truth is we have to do that, because what is at stake is the future of our capability to produce food. Biodiversity, the stability of climate are things that we need to produce food even in future generations. And this is why we have to change the entire food system as it is suggested in the farm-to-fork strategy. Of course, it is said that we should have 25% organic by 2030. And we all know that you can't command that. But you can direct your tools in a way that this could be possible. And this is what we have to do. But and of course I agree, because we have there a system which brings all the public services we need from agriculture. But we cannot stop just by converting 25% of our farmland to such a practice. We have to convert the entire farm and food chain, and the symbol for that is going down with pesticide use by 50%. And when we talk about all these things, my impression of all which has been said up to now is that it's not about do we need that, but what kind of instruments do we have to put into place to get that done. And this, most of it is explained in the farm-to-fork strategy. But let's name 3 things. One is we have to spend the European taxpayers' money, not to distribute it like with a bin on every hectare in the European Union, but to pay farmers for services our societies need from them, and which are not paid by the market. That's very simple, and it's also something which we are not doing right now. Then, of course, we have to change our food and consumption patterns. And we don't have to do that just by asking people to do it or commanding them to do it. But it's a question of prices. Jan told us about true prices. True prices are necessary to make markets function. Our markets are not functioning because those who succeed most to put the costs of their production on future generations and on the community are best in market. That's not functioning markets. So we have to do that, and many tools could be used for that. And one thing is clear. The most silly thing we can do is to do social policies at the expense of environment and the chances of future generations. First of all, because poor people suffer most from the consequences of that. And second, it's the most expensive way to do that. It's much cheaper to have proper social policies and then protect environment and have true prices in food and thus direct food consumption patterns to more sustainable ways to do that. And in the end, of course, we have to protect our farmers. You have said that before, from unfair prices in the market. So if we talk about trade agreements, and we have a lot of them on the table right now, we have to talk about border adjustments when different standards are prevailing. Our commissioner, the president of our commission, for von der Leyen, she has talked about that in the context of carbon costs. But we have to talk about that also in the context of environmental costs. And these three elements could be enough to redirect our food and farm system to a real sustainable food and farm system.
Thank you, Prince Löwenstein, for your statement. I will present the last results of the polling, which all of you voted, hopefully all of you. And this is now question number 4. May I see the slide, please? Thank you. What would most help the business model of European farming? And the biggest majority, or the best people view, like 40% payments for ecosystem services. And second one with 30%, it's the shorter supply chains and direct-to-consumer sales. Then the third place goes to the reinforcing pricing settings powers to reinforcing pricing setting powers for farmers groups. And the last one, increased support through the cap with 6%. The 1 point, shorter supply chains and direct-to-consumer sales. Maybe this is quite something for you, Dr. Julia Köhn. Please do statement now.
What a surprise. So the voters were quite wise, voting especially for what we are doing in our company. So Pillars is a platform that is enabling farm-to-fork sales of food. And our mission is to shorten food supply chains by the means of digitalization. And we believe that this is necessary in order to create a more sustainable food system that is more resilient on the one hand side, but on the other hand side also more fair in terms of competition, prices, and also the farmers' incomes. Because if you have direct-to-consumer pricing, then pricing becomes more transparent, and consumers know who they are paying for and what the consequences of their food purchases really are. So we spend a lot of effort in making food supply much more transparent and more efficient. But we are not alone on this journey with Pillars. Pillars is just one of about 250 very innovative companies in the field of food and agriculture in Germany, and there are about 2,000 all over Europe in this field of new agri-food economy. It's a part of, we are a part of a joint effort that tries to bring about a food system that is on the one hand economically successful and on the other hand not harming our environment and also not producing any social costs. So what we want is, we want to use the power of innovation and entrepreneurship in order to bring about business models that really help us to create a whole food supply chain that is really fostering the entrepreneurial spirits of the farmers and also allowing the consumers to buy the food that they really want to buy. And then the conditions in order to bring about a new agri-food economy in Europe is that we have to stop subsidizing hectares. We have to incorporate the carbon costs, but also the environmental costs of our food production, and we have to foster innovation. Europe, compared to other parts of the world, is investing much too little in innovation in agriculture and food. When it comes, for example, to venture capital, then the US is spending about 1.8 billion per year in venture capital. In Europe, it's about $500 million. And in other parts of the world, the ratio is even worse. So what I would like to talk about today is not only how to make farming more efficient, but how to transition the whole supply chain in order to create a new agri-food economy that is really sustainable.
To make it very clear, maybe I didn't mention it beforehand, the polls, the results I was presenting, these were the answers you have given in the Mentimeter.com. Just to make this clear, we were discussing about it, if this was clear to you as an audience as well. Thank you, Julia, for your statement as well.